Today we're going to talk about the brand new Yokomo BD10, which is a four-wheel drive 10-scale electric touring car. And we actually have one all built up that's an employee ride. So let's get going. The Yokomo BD10 is a kit, so it will need to be assembled out of the box, and then it will also require tires, wheels, a body, and then all the electrical equipment, motor, ESC, servo, transponder tools, and other miscellaneous items. But once it's all assembled, the BD10 is a 190mm 10-scale touring car, so it's four-wheel drive, can be used in stock or modified classes. At its release, the first BD10 was a carbon chassis version, but from what I understand, there will also be an aluminum chassis version of the BD10 as well. There are a few different reasons why you would want to use or pick a carbon chassis over the aluminum chassis. Mainly it has to do with the different flex characteristics of the materials. In a general sense, the carbon will be good for the lower to like mid to high traction applications. In asphalt, the carbon works pretty well as it can flex and help generate traction out of the car. Aluminum, on the other hand, tends to be a bit more rigid. Of course, it all depends on the type of material and the thicknesses. In the general sense, aluminum tends to be a bit more rigid, so it can be best to use it in really high bite surfaces, in like carpet applications. But regardless of the material of the chassis, both platforms are highly adjustable, and there are many different steps you can take to adjust the amount of flex in the touring car. Now here is our assembled BD10. This particular model belongs to one of our customer service representatives, James, who specializes in the surface category, and he's a big RC enthusiast, and he recently built this up from scratch, buying all the components needed to finish it off. So big thank you to James for letting us use his car for this video and really being the inspiration behind this video to begin with. Now, some of the items that James chose to put on his BD10, we have a McLaren ESC and motor system. This is the Pico competition ESC. I believe it's 100 amps, and then it's a McLaren Team Edition V2 motor, a 21.5 turn, because that's what they race here at our local track. The servo here is a ProTech RC 160 SS. It's super speed, and it's also a low profile servo, which is really handy to use in this car because space is kind of tight in this area. And then here, of course, we have our Futaba Receiver. He's using a Futaba system. We have a fan right here. It's a 30mm fan. It's actually one of the ProTech RC aluminum fans, but any 30 by 30 by 10mm fan should fit in this spot. Since James is racing, he also opted to put a transponder here. It's one of the black MyLap transponders. The black transponders look pretty nice, right? It really helps blend in with this stealthy look inside the car. The battery over here is, again, it's another ProTech item. It's a 63 milliamp hour 2-cell battery. It's 120C as well. And then James changed these thumb screws holding down the battery. The Yokomo system is a little bit different the way that the BD10 comes stock, so these are option parts he added. He had to purchase, it was at 3 by 16mm set screws that were kind of long, put them down in the post, and then the actual screw nuts here are from Revolution Design, and they were intended for the team associated B74. But once you add those set screws, these thumb nut screws go right on, no problem. And James mainly did that, I believe, because he just liked the look of the black and the chamfered silver to finish off the look of the car. Another really important thing that James had to change is that the car comes with a spur gear and gearing that's intended for faster motors. Since he has a 21.5 turn kind of stockish motor in there, he had to change the gearing quite a bit. So this is a 95 tooth 64 pitch Axon spur gear, and then he mated that with a 40 tooth 64 pitch Axon pinion gear in aluminum. And he tells me that one of the gripes he has about this system is that accessing the set screw on the pinion gear there is almost impossible without removing the entire top deck, popping it up, and giving him access to get his little 1.5 millimeter driver in there. With a ball tip 1.5 millimeter, it's kind of iffy. Those tips aren't very big, so to play it safe, that top deck needed to be removed to try out different gearing. For our tires and wheels here, since James has been racing at an indoor carpet track that has what they call Lancaster gray, I'm not familiar with it, but I guess it's a pretty popular type of low profile indoor carpet that several other indoor tracks have been using. But anyways, the Schumacher mini pin tires have proven to work really well on that carpet surface. These are the SST narrow mini pins that he's got on there with Schumacher Revlite dish white wheels. And then lastly, James added one of the BD design JP8 pre-painted bodies to finish off his car, because they come pre-painted, you just have to trim them out. It's pretty convenient. So that's how James outfitted his BD10. Now, as far as the setup goes, he pretty much used the setup that comes included with the BD10 as the box stock setup. So he used the included differential fluid in the rear, as well as the shock fluid in all four corners. You'll notice here on the top deck that we have some dark steel screws, and then these shiny screws I believe are aluminum. This is also the stock setup, because you can use those screws of different materials to actually adjust the amount of flex depending on how many screws and where you put them on the car. Now, if we move away from what James did to his BD10 and just talk about the chassis in general, it is a really nice car, and there have been quite a few differences or changes from the BD9. And one of the main and most obvious differences now on the BD10 is how this spur gear and motor area has been moved right into the center, balancing the front and rear belts so they're of equal length. The idea is that you move up the motor and electronics kind of get scrunched together, and you'll notice with the battery here, this block of electronics is really nicely centralized. And Yokomo says that this car is really stable and especially easy to drive. And since it is a competition race car, having it easy to drive really helps put down fast laps. Here's a picture of James's BD10 on the right and a BD9 on the left. You notice the belt lengths and the motor position are quite a bit different there. Another thing that Yokomo did to change the BD10 is that the suspension arms now are 2 millimeters longer. Now, to do that while keeping the same width, Yokomo essentially just moved the suspension pin hangers a little bit closer into the diff housings, into the gearbox. So the arms are a little bit longer, but that gets pinched slightly in that center diff area. Speaking of diffs, in the back it is a fluid-filled gear differential, and then in the front is a spool. There's no differential action. Sway bars are included, front and rear with the BD10, and they are bearing supported on the gear housings or the transmission housings, front and rear. It's really nice how they mounted the bearings in there like that. Pretty impressive. I'm also impressed with these ball cups that go on the sway bars. They hold on to the sway bar by using a set screw, and that set screw hole is just molded right into the ball cup like that. So it's just a one-piece ball cup. Some other cool features on the BD10. In the front, we have our double jointed universals. That used to previously be an option part. Another option part that's now standard equipment is the floating servo mount on the BD10. Of course, that holds the servo from both points, but the mount actually only attaches to the chassis in the center to avoid any tweaking. Another thing worth pointing out is the shocks on the BD10. They are pretty dang small, but they have a new O-ring design inside where they use this two O-rings kind of put together to help prevent leaking and keep the shocks ultra smooth. But overall, the BD10 is a really nice car. It's mainly just all really nice materials. The upper deck and the bottom deck are carbon fiber, as well as the shock towers. Then there are lots of aluminum pieces used throughout the diff housings in the front and the rear, or the bulkheads, and then the suspension hangers in the front and the rear. The steering pieces in here are again all aluminum. So pretty impressive kit that's very centered towards competition race use. And if you want any more information on the BD10 with the carbon version or any of the components here that James used in his car, we'll add some links down below to shoot you over to the AMain Hobbies website. If you guys have any questions, drop that for us down below. If you liked this video, give it a like and be sure to subscribe for our future videos. I'm Brett from AMain Hobbies. Thanks for watching.